AI Courtroom.
Jake.
Turn off the video record at 1:05 p.m.
Mr. Epstein, how long have you been sexually attracted to underage minor females?
Objection, harassing, argumentative.
Are you kidding?
No, I mean, I don't feel like I'm divulging any secrets here, right?
Move to strike.
No, that's the question.
I'd like to answer that question as well, like all your other questions today. However, I have to follow my attorney's advice. They have told me that I must invoke my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment right to not answer those questions today or any questions relevant to this lawsuit.
In July of 2019, financier Jeffrey Epstein was arrested and charged with federal sex trafficking offenses involving minors. Prosecutors alleged that for years, he operated a system that recruited teenage girls to his homes in New York and Florida. Epstein denied the allegations and pleaded not guilty, setting the stage for what could have been one of the most closely watched trials in modern history. But the trial never happened. Tonight, 2 artificial intelligences will examine the arguments that might have been made in that courtroom. One will argue the case for the prosecution. The other will challenge it as the defense, members of the jury. When the arguments are finished, the verdict will be yours. Prosecutor, your opening statement.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Jeffrey Epstein is guilty. He ran a sex trafficking ring for years. He picked out girls as young as 14, paid them cash for massages at his mansions in New York, Florida, and his private island, then abused them and made them bring in more girls. We have the victims ready to testify. We have his own flight logs showing him flying these girls around on his plane. We have photos, videos, and cash records from raids on his homes. He thought his money and power would protect him forever, but the facts prove he broke the law and hurt dozens of kids. Defense, your move. What lies are you going to spin first?
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecutor stood up and said, Jeffrey Epstein is guilty. That is not proof. That is an accusation. Yes, Jeffrey Epstein was charged in July 2019 with federal sex trafficking offenses. That's a fact. But being charged is not the same as being proven guilty. You heard about flight logs. Being on a plane is not a crime. You heard about money. Paying someone is not automatically a crime. You heard about homes in New York and Florida. Owning property is not illegal. The government must prove he knowingly trafficked minors. They must prove intent. They must prove a criminal operation, beyond a reasonable doubt. This case cannot be decided on emotion, headlines, or anger. It must be decided on solid evidence. We will demand proof. And if there is reasonable doubt, the law requires one verdict: not guilty.
Opening statements are now complete. The court will hear the evidence. Prosecution, you may begin.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, picture a 14-year-old girl, scared, needing money. She walks into Epstein's mansion, thinking it's just a massage for cash. Instead, he touches her sexually, forces her to touch him, then pays her like it's normal. Worse, he hands her extra money to bring her friends. More kids, more victims. Dozens of these girls told the same heartbreaking story to police. Recruited young, abused, paid to recruit others. Palm Beach cops heard from over 30 teens, most with no massage skills, just vulnerable kids. Raids found thousands of nude photos of young girls on his hard drives and walls, videos, cash records matching their terrified accounts, flight logs to his island, where it continued. These are real children whose lives he shattered.
Objection. Emotional appeal.
Overruled. The jury may consider the statement as argument.
Their sworn words match the photos, the money, the logs. Defense, how do you face these girls' pain and call this nothing? What erases their truth?
Ladies and gentlemen, first, no one here is calling anyone's pain nothing. Objection to that characterization. It's emotional and misleading.
Overruled. The defense may continue.
Now let's slow this down. The prosecution says dozens told the same story. Similar stories do not automatically mean proof of a crime. People can talk. Memories can blend. Details matter. They mention photos. Were the individuals proven to be minors? Were dates verified? Context matters. They mention cash. Cash payments alone are not sex trafficking. And most important, the The government must prove that Mr. Jeffrey Epstein knowingly recruited minors and ran a trafficking operation. Sympathy is not evidence. Proof is.
Ladies and gentlemen, objection overruled. The victim's pain isn't emotional manipulation. It's the direct result of what he did. These aren't blended memories. Dozens of girls gave consistent, sworn statements. Same pattern, same ages, many 14 to 17, proven by birth dates and school records. Same payment after abuse routine, same recruitment bonuses paid by him. Photos from his home, many showed clearly underage girls, some identified by victims themselves as minors at the time.
Objection. Assumes facts not established.
Overruled. The prosecution may continue.
Cash wasn't random. Records match victim testimony, paid right after sexual acts, plus extra for bringing more kids. He knew their ages. He met them young. Through other teens he paid. That's knowing recruitment of minors for sex acts. That's trafficking. Sympathy? No. Facts from victims, photos, records, logs, real proof. Defense. What actual evidence do you have to discredit these matching accounts and seized proof?
Ladies and gentlemen, the prosecutor keeps saying proven. Saying it louder doesn't make it proven. They claim Mr. Jeffrey Epstein knew exact ages. Show you where he was told. Show you a message, a document, a witness who heard him say it. Assumptions are not knowledge. Clearly underage photos? Clearly to who? Were medical age experts used? Or are we guessing based on appearance? Payments after visits? Wealthy people pay people for all kinds of services. That alone is not trafficking. You need proof of intent. Not outrage, not repetition. Proof.
Ladies and gentlemen, we don't need a confession tape. Intent shows in what he did. These were teenage girls, middle school and high school kids. They talked about classes, parents, boyfriends, right in front of him. He still abused them sexually, during massages, paid cash immediately after, and gave extra money every time they brought another young girl. That's not coincidence. That's paying for a steady supply of minors. Victims identified their own underage photos in his collection, naked pictures he kept. He targeted vulnerable teens, rewarded recruitment, kept the abuse going. That's deliberate trafficking. Defense, show one shred of proof these were adults he believed were adults. Anything real? We're waiting.
Ladies and gentlemen, notice what the prosecutor just did. They said he must have known. Must have. That's still a guess. Talking about school or parents does not prove someone's age. Plenty of 18 and 19-year-olds talk about those same things every day. Victims identifying photos years later is not the same as proving what Mr. Jeffrey Epstein believed at the time. And the government still hasn't shown you a single message, document, or witness where he was told, clearly, this girl is underage. In criminal court, he should have known isn't enough. They must prove he did know.
Ladies and gentlemen, the defense twists he must have known into a guess. It's not. It's what the evidence forces us to conclude. These girls weren't 18 or 19, passing as adults. They were 14, 15, 16, middle school and early high school kids. They arrived with friends who were the same age, talked openly about being in school, parents driving them, no jobs, no independence. He saw it, heard it, and kept abusing them anyway. Victims didn't just identify photos years later. They described the exact circumstances when the pictures were taken, during the abuse sessions when they were minors. Those photos were in his locked safe. We don't need him to say out loud, she's underage. The law doesn't require verbal admissions. A mountain of consistent victim testimony, obvious youth, recruitment of more teens, and keeping nude images of them proves he knew exactly what he was doing. Defense, stop hiding behind impossible demands. Show us proof these were grown women he reasonably believed were adults. You have nothing.
Ladies and gentlemen, listen carefully to what the prosecutor just said. The evidence forces us to conclude. That's still a conclusion, not direct proof. They keep saying the girls were obviously young, obviously to them. But the law doesn't convict people based on hindsight. Where is the ID he checked? Where is the message saying, I know she's 15? Where is a witness who heard Mr. Jeffrey Epstein admit he knew their ages? None has been shown. And remember, recruitment by others does not prove he knew their ages. Suspicion isn't proof, and in this courtroom, proof is what matters.
Ladies and gentlemen, these weren't grown women hiding their age. These were frightened little girls, 14, 15, 16, showing up at his door with braces, school backpacks, no makeup, talking about homework and curfews. He looked them in the eye, heard every word, and still chose to abuse them, pay them, and pay them more to bring their classmates. No ID check, He never asked because he didn't want to know the truth out loud. He already knew. The law doesn't need him to confess on video. It needs the heartbreaking pattern. Dozens of identical stories from broken kids, photos he hid of their young bodies, cash handed over right after the violation, bonuses for fresh victims. These girls lived in terror and shame for years because of what he did. Their tears, their matching accounts, the evidence in his own home, that's not suspicion. That's proof he knew and didn't stop. Defense, stop pretending ignorance erases pain. Show us one real thing proving he believed they were adults. You can't.
Ladies and gentlemen, the prosecutor keeps painting pictures, backpacks, braces, homework. Powerful imagery. But imagery is not evidence. Ask yourself, where is the actual proof that Mr. Jeffrey Epstein knew their ages? No ID shown, no message saying he knew, no witness saying he was told directly. Instead, you're being asked to assume what he must have known based on appearance and emotion. That's not how criminal law works. The government must prove knowledge beyond a reasonable doubt, not suggest it, not dramatize it. Show proof, not storytelling.
Ladies and gentlemen, the defense calls this storytelling and demands a direct message or ID check. But the proof is in the victim's sworn words and what Epstein himself said and did. One victim told police she was recruited at 14, and Epstein explicitly said he preferred the younger, the better, when she brought an older friend. He rejected the 23-year-old as too old, yet kept abusing the teens she recruited, including a 14-year-old. Multiple girls testified they discussed their real ages with him, school, curfews, being underage, and he proceeded anyway. In one case, a girl even talked about her prior abuse as a child, and he continued. Police reports from Palm Beach, dozens of high school girls, mostly 14 to 17, with no massage experience, paid after sexual acts, incentivized to recruit friends from school. He knew they were kids talking about homework and parents. This pattern, his own words rejecting older girls, consistent testimony he was told or discussed their youth. That's not assumption. That's evidence he knew they were minors and exploited them deliberately. Defense, you want direct proof. Here it is from victims under oath and his recorded preferences. What do you have to counter it?
Ladies and gentlemen, now we're finally hearing specifics, but look closer. One alleged quote, "The younger the better." Who heard it? One witness? Years later? No recording, no document, just memory. And notice something else. The prosecutor says a 23-year-old was brought to Mr. Jeffrey Epstein in Sound Streets. That alone shows adults were part of these encounters. Witnesses claiming they discussed their ages must be tested carefully. Memories change, stories spread.
Objection! That's pure speculation.
Sustained.
Especially after years of investigations and media attention. In criminal court, a repeated story is still just testimony. The government must prove knowledge with solid, reliable evidence, not unverified quotes and recollections.
Ladies and gentlemen, the defense dismisses the younger the better quote as one unreliable memory. Wrong. It came straight from Haley Robson, a recruiter who was 16 to 18 at the time. She told Palm Beach police in 2005 that Epstein said it to her directly when she tried bringing a 23-year-old. He rejected her as too old and repeated, "The younger the better." That's in police reports from sworn interviews. She brought multiple high school girls after that, including 14-year-olds, who testified the same pattern. Abuse during massages, paid cash, incentivized to recruit friends from school. Victims didn't just recall vaguely. One girl told detectives she discussed being in high school with him. He asked her favorite sex position right after. Others said school, curfews, parents came up and talk. He knew they were kids. This isn't fuzzy memory after media hype. It's consistent police statements from 2005 to 2006, victim after victim, matching the recruitment and abuse. Defense, attack the quote all you want, but it's from direct police interviews, not court drama. Where's your proof he thought these were adults? Show it.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about this key witness, Haley Robson. She admits she recruited girls. She brought them to Mr. Jeffrey Epstein and was paid for it. So ask the obvious question. Does she have a reason to shift blame? If someone helped bring people into a situation, pointing the finger at someone else becomes very convenient. Police interviews are not the same as proven facts. They are statements that must be tested in court. Before you rely on her claims, you must decide one thing. Is she a neutral witness or someone protecting herself?
The defense questions Haley Robson's motives because she recruited. But she started as a victim, 16, scared, drawn in by his money and threats. She didn't invent his words to save herself. She reported them to police early, in 2005, before any plea deals or media storm. Her account isn't isolated. Other recruiters and victims echoed the same thing. Epstein pushed for younger girls, turned away anyone who looked too old or mature. One brought a friend he dismissed as not what he wanted. He wanted schoolgirls. Police files from that era show multiple independent statements lining up. He asked about their schools, their ages and casual talk, then abused them anyway. No one had to guess. He probed, he selected, he continued. That's not shifting blame. That's a pattern of deliberate choice. Defense, if Robson's so unreliable, produced anything, showing Epstein asked for proof of age, turned away young-looking girls, or thought they were adults. You've got silence.
The prosecutor says Haley Robson had no reason to shift blame. But think about it. She admits she recruited girls and was paid. That puts her directly in the middle of this. When someone faces that kind of exposure, pointing to Mr. Jeffrey Epstein as the mastermind is a powerful way to reduce their own responsibility. And notice what you still haven't seen. A message from him asking for minors, a written instruction, anything concrete. Instead, the case keeps coming back to people involved in the same system, explaining their role after the fact.
The defense paints Haley Robson as self-serving because she recruited, but her story holds up because it aligns with what Epstein's own employees and other victims reported separately. No coordination needed. One masseuse who worked for him told investigators he specifically requested young-looking girls and got angry if they sent anyone who appeared mature. Another girl he abused said he bragged about liking fresh ones from high school. These aren't recycled tales from one person. They're independent accounts from different times, different people, all pointing to the same preference. He sought out and selected minors. No secret memo required when the man's actions and words, reported by multiple sources, show he targeted youth on purpose. Defense, if everyone's lying to protect themselves, why did the details match so precisely across unrelated witnesses? Produce something, anything, showing he screened for adults or rejected young girls.
Ladies and gentlemen, notice the pattern in what you just heard. Someone said, another person reported, an employee claimed. More stories stacked on top of each other. But when several people are part of the same circle, hearing the same rumors or talking to the same investigators, their accounts can start sounding alike. And the prosecutor still hasn't shown you one hard piece of evidence where Jeffrey Epstein requested minors directly. No email, no instruction, no record saying bring underage girls. When a case this serious relies mainly on what people say years later, your job is to question it carefully before calling it proof.
The court has heard the evidence and the arguments presented. We will now move to closing statements. Prosecution, you may begin.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Jeffrey Epstein didn't need emails or memos to commit these crimes. He used cash, power, and a network of scared young girls to keep it running. Dozens of victims, real teenagers, 14, 15, 16, came forward with stories that match perfectly. Lured with money for massages, sexually abused, paid immediately after, then paid extra to recruit their school friends. Independent accounts from different girls, given years apart, line up on the key facts: his preference for younger, his rejection of anyone older, his deliberate choice to exploit kids. No one fabricates matching details across dozens of people without coordination. That's not rumor. That's evidence of a trafficking operation he ran and controlled. These girls lost their innocence because he targeted them, knew they were minors, and kept the cycle going for years. The pain in their voices, the photos he hid, the money trails he left, that is proof beyond reasonable doubt. You don't need a signed confession from a predator to see guilt. You have the victim's truth, the pattern, the hard evidence from his own homes. Jeffrey Epstein is guilty of sex trafficking minors. The only just verdict is guilty. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecutor asked you to convict based on a pattern. But the law requires proof, clear, direct proof, beyond a reasonable doubt. You heard many accusations, but accusations, even many of them, are not automatically facts. Memories can change. Stories can influence one another over time. Ask yourselves what hard proof showed that Jeffrey Epstein knew anyone was underage and intended to traffic minors. No document, no message, no verified instruction asking for minors. The government's burden is enormous for a reason, because a verdict must rest on certainty, not emotion. If there is reasonable doubt, and here there clearly is, the law requires one verdict, not guilty.
The courtroom is now yours. Prosecution or defense? Tell us your verdict in the comments. And don't forget, this isn't the only case on trial. Check out our other AI Courtroom episodes and decide for yourself which debate was the strongest. Subscribe and join the new era of justice. Court is adjourned.